Over 1 million engines fail each year due to oil change errors. This amounts to over $2.8 billion that could have been prevented. In this video, I'm revealing the steps you need to take before every oil change so that your engine will never die. I'm revealing trade secrets that prevent blown head gaskets, valve leaks, and torpedoed engines. At the end, I'll debunk an oil myth that costs ignorant drivers $5,000 in damages. Step 1. Never use an oil change place. Imagine going in for an oil change and 40 miles later, your engine blows up. That's what happened to a client after he stopped by a Jiffy Lube. The problem? The tech forgot to put in new oil. Everybody has had a bad experience with an oil change place. These shops charge up to 50% less than mechanics and do half as good a job. Low prices mean low wages, disgruntled staff, and terrible service. That is why you always hear about experiences like double gasketing, over-tightened drain plugs, mysterious leaks, and so much more. If you want to change your oil right, either pay a good mechanic or learn to do it yourself. Frankly, it's still better to do it yourself, because many mechanics don't take the time to do everything right. If it's a very busy place, they might not even bother with the next step. Step 2. Warm up your engine before draining the oil. Did you know that cold oil moves up to 10 times slower than warm oil? That means what should only take a few minutes can take an hour or two when the engine is cold. However, the more serious problem is that this cold oil can leave behind contaminants, like sludge and metal particles. That is why some people recommend an engine flush, or a flush with cheap oil afterwards. That's a waste of money. All you need to do is warm up your engine before an oil change. Oil reaches its optimal flow rate at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. However, that is way too hot. For context, 111 degrees Fahrenheit is enough to cause third-degree burns. Drive your car for about 10 minutes, then let it cool for 5 to 10 minutes before draining it. This process maximizes flow and gives any contaminants that settled while the engine was off a chance to be resuspended. Later in the video, I'll explain how an engine flush can damage your engine. But first, let's look at something even more destructive. Step 3. Use the correct oil specifications. This right here is the leading cause of engine failure. If you've never done it before, consult your owner's manual before you buy oil. You need to get the exact API service classification and the SAE viscosity grade. The API service classification is a number system starting with S for gasoline and C for diesel engines. The letters for gasoline range from SA to SQ, with SQ being the most recent. You also have classifications like SN+. Most people don't pay attention to the API number and focus on the viscosity grade. Big mistake. Data from a Canadian fleet company showed that mixing SP and SN grade oils resulted in 80% more oil pressure warnings due to sludge buildup. Older oils with higher phosphorus and sulfur content can also damage your catalytic converter. That's a $2,500 repair, because you didn't take a second to read the label. However, the greater danger is using the wrong viscosity grade oil. This slip-up can also cause severe sludge buildup, which is why car makers stamp the number on the oil filler cap. Oil that is too thin won't provide adequate lubrication, while thick oil reduces fuel economy and causes excessive drag. The right oil will also contain additives needed to delay oil breakdown and prevent sludge. This is particularly important if you do prolonged oil changes. If you're leaving the oil in for 10,000 miles or 15,000 miles, you can't afford to get the oil wrong. I recommend 5,000-mile changes with full synthetic. Before you buy oil, you need to watch this video first. A serious warning to all car owners: stop using this engine oil right now. Save this video for later because we've got something else you can't afford to get wrong. Step 4. Use OEM or high-quality filters. Every time you start your engine, there is always some metal-on-metal contact before the oil circulates. This creates metal shavings that swim around the engine and end up in the filter. If the filter doesn't trap these shavings, they can block oil passages and cause catastrophic failure. That makes the oil filter one of the most important engine accessories, if not the most important. So, when it's time to replace it, don't just grab the cheapest one. If you change oil every 3,000 miles, a cheap one might be fine. However, if you change oil every 5,000 miles or more, use an OEM or a high-quality filter for 3 main reasons. The first reason is the filter media. A good filter shouldn't allow any particles that can be seen by the human eye. Quality filters use cellulose, glass, polyester, or synthetic blend media that can trap particles down to 10 to 20 microns. Cheaper filters might only catch particles down to 40 microns, which is visible to humans. That's enough to scratch and score engine components and ruin your engine. The second thing you need from a filter is a properly calibrated bypass valve. All filters have a bypass valve. If the filter gets clogged, this valve opens to allow unfiltered oil to flow to the engine, which prevents oil starvation. You don't want the bypass valve to open too easily, which will cause significant wear, or too late, which causes starvation. The third crucial part of the filter is the anti-drainback valve. This prevents oil from draining out of the filter when the engine is off. When this happens, you'll have too many dry starts, which is a silent engine killer. Save yourself the trouble by getting a good filter like Bosch or Mobil one. You don't want to save $5 and end up spending $5,000 on a new engine. Speaking of engine damage, now is the time to make sure yours isn't already falling apart. Step 5. Inspect the oil. Here's a pro tip for people who want their cars to last forever. Perform an oil analysis once a year. This test will let you know if there's anything wearing out in your engine. It will also give an indicator of how often you need to change your oil. If you don't want to spend $100 every year on a comprehensive test, you can inspect the oil you drain out of your car. If the oil is black, thick, and smells burnt, that's perfectly normal. You can also rub a bit of oil between your fingers. If it feels grainy, it means metal shavings are floating around your engine. If you haven't experienced any signs like engine overheating, rough idling, or stalling, you have a bit of time to act. Send the oil off for analysis immediately. Another indicator of metals is when the oil looks, well, metallic. If you can see the metallic flakes, you need to see a mechanic immediately. This could indicate bearing wear, piston, or camshaft damage. A milky appearance is another telltale sign of danger. It means that water or coolant is mixing with the oil. This can happen when you have a blown gasket head, a cracked block, or a failing oil cooler. However, it could also just be condensation from you taking too many short trips, especially in cold weather. If everything looks normal, it's time for something even experienced mechanics forget once in a while. Step 6. Lubricate the oil filter gasket. Have you ever had an encounter when the oil filter fell off while driving? Or it's time to remove the oil filter, but it's incredibly tight? That's what happens when you don't lubricate the oil filter gasket. Before you install the new filter, take a small amount of new engine oil and smear it around the rubber gasket or O-ring. This ensures a proper seal and prevents the gasket from tearing or binding during installation. And by the way, after you remove the old filter, make sure the old gasket also comes off. Many experienced mechanics will forget this sometimes and end up double gasketing. When this happens, the new filter doesn't bind properly and can then fall off while you're driving. This will cause immediate oil starvation and can severely damage the engine. Bonus tip: pre-fill the oil filter. Here is another tip that has recently become controversial. However, the science backs it up. When you start your car after an oil change, the oil first fills up the filter before it begins to circulate. This delays oil circulation by an extra second or two. During that time, the rod bearings and the crankshaft will scrape against each other. By pre-filling the filter, you're reducing metal-on-metal contact and prolonging the lifespan of your engine. Some people argue that pouring the oil directly introduces contaminants because the oil isn't pre-filtered. What the data actually shows is that the number of contaminants larger than 14 microns is 6 times as much coming from the engine as what comes out of the pre-filled filter. If your car doesn't recommend pre-filling the oil or you forget to do it, your car will still get to 200,000 miles. The real danger is if you don't follow the right cold start processes. We cover them extensively in this video. Stop ruining your engine with these cold start mistakes. Step 7. Use the right torque for the drain plug. When you're done draining the oil, clean around the drain plug opening. This is important. Always install a new crush washer. Some people flip it over, and that is a worst-case scenario. But these things only cost pennies. Every time you screw and unscrew the washer, it deforms a little bit. This can cause oil to leak out of your car slowly. If you only inspect your oil level once a month, like most people do, you could run dangerously low before you notice. By then, your bearings might be cooked, and you're looking at up to $4,000 in repairs. Never be cheap with your oil changes. Once you have the new crush washer in place, thread the drain plug back into the oil pan by hand first. This will prevent cross-threading, which is an even bigger mistake than reusing a crush washer. It is imperative that you use the right torque to install the drain plug. If you over-tighten the drain plug, you can strip the oil pan threads or even crack the oil pan. Your engine will lose oil quickly, and your engine can be toast in minutes. This is a very common mistake at oil change places. The opposite is also a problem. If it's too loose and the drain plug falls out while you're driving, say goodbye to $5,000. Consult your owner's manual to find the exact torque specifications and use a torque wrench. It's a relatively cheap tool that will save you a lot of money and tears. The same goes for the next part. Step 8. Use your hand to tighten the oil filter. Most filters should only be installed by hand. While it's okay to use a filter wrench to remove it, never use it to install it. Thread the new filter on by hand until the gasket makes contact with the engine block. Then, using your hands, turn it an additional 3/4 to 1 full turn, or whatever the filter manufacturer recommends. If the manufacturer recommends a specific torque, you may then use a torque wrench. Remember that over-tightening will make it difficult to remove and could end up leaving the old gasket behind. Under-tightening will cause oil leaks, and the filter could fall off while driving. Using the right torque on the oil filter is non-negotiable. However, it doesn't matter if you don't do the next thing because you'll wreck your engine anyway. Step 9. Clean the oil filler cap and neck. You see all of that black gunk around the oil filler cap? You have to clean that before you unscrew the cap. If that dirt gets into the oil, it forms an abrasive paste that can lead to premature engine failure. While the oil filter will get rid of the larger particles, the smaller ones sneak past it, especially if it's a cheap filter. These particles will grind against bearings, cylinder walls, and within the turbocharger. What is just as important as cleaning the neck is using a clean funnel. Many people don't store their funnels properly, so dust, sand, and debris go straight into the engine. Here's a tip. Clean the funnel after use and store it in a box, and cover both ends of the funnel with a cloth. Now, we've come to the end of all the things you need to do before pouring in the oil. However, there are still a few more things to do to protect your engine, starting with the most dangerous. Step 10. Measure the right amount of oil. Did you know that putting in too much oil can do as much damage as putting in too little oil? When there is too much oil, the oil pan becomes too full. So when you start the engine, the crankshaft comes in contact with the oil and acts like a whisk. This aerates the oil and prevents it from lubricating the engine. The result is catastrophic engine failure. That is why you need to know the exact amount of oil your car needs. That's also why there are measuring lines on the bottles. When you pour in new oil, always use a clean funnel and be careful not to spill. Oil is flammable, so if it stays on hot engine components, you might experience smoking or a fire. Next, pour half a quart less oil than the manual recommends. For example, if your engine takes 5 quarts, pour in 4.5. This is just in case you didn't drain out all of the oil, so you don't end up with too much. Before you check the oil level, I've got another pro tip for you. Step 11. Inspect the PCV valve. If you drive a lot of short trips, then you're definitely cooking your PCV valve. The positive crankcase ventilation valve prevents pressure buildup in the crankcase. It redirects blow-by gases, which contain harmful contaminants, back into the intake system to be reburned. This action also prevents the release of unburned fuel and contaminants into the environment. When the PCV valve gets clogged, that pressure buildup damages gaskets and seals, leading to oil leaks. You will also experience rough idling, poor engine performance, and misfires. Typically, a clogged PCV valve will throw engine codes, but not always. So, the first thing you should do is look around the PCV valve to make sure there is no sludge around it. Next, take it out and shake it. You should be able to hear the plunger moving around freely. You can also clean it with carburetor cleaner and put it back in. PCV valves last about 30,000 miles, but replace them as soon as they're bad. It only costs about $20 and will prevent thousands in repairs. Before we get back to the oil change, there's another crucial component you can't afford to ignore. Step 12. Check the air filter. Some mechanics always offer to inspect the engine and cabin air filter at every oil change. No, this isn't a way to get more money out of you. This is a life-saving intervention. A dirty engine filter restricts airflow, which forces the engine to work harder. It also decreases fuel efficiency and leads to premature engine wear. On the other hand, a clogged cabin air filter forces the HVAC to work too hard. This will damage the blower motor and, if you're unlucky, the compressor. Remember that the cooling system works directly with the oil system to manage engine temperature. Fortunately, checking the filters only takes a few seconds. If the filter is mildly dirty, dust it off and put it back. Otherwise, buy a new one. These parts are dirt cheap and, at the very least, will save you a few $100s. Now that the oil has had enough time to settle, it's time for a few final checks. Step 13. Check the oil level and check for leaks. The only way to get accurate oil level readings is on level ground. So, take your car off the ramp and keep the engine running for at least 30 seconds. After you switch it off, wait for about 5 minutes for the oil to drip back into the pan. Next, remove the dipstick, clean it, then reinsert it fully before checking the level. If the oil level is too low, top it up. If it's too high, you need to drain the excess out. Oil should be close to the max line and never above it. Next, go underneath the car to make sure there is no oil leaking from the drain plug, filter, or anywhere else. If everything checks out, there's just one more thing to do. Step 14. Reset the oil life monitor. Modern cars have an oil life monitoring system that uses algorithms to estimate oil degradation. If you don't reset the system, you'll get false alerts like premature oil change lights. Even worse, you might not get another warning when a change is actually due, and that could be disastrous. Check your manual to find out how to accurately reset the oil life monitor. Now that we've covered all the things you need to do before an oil change, it's time to tackle one of the most polarizing oil myths. Do you need an engine flush at every oil change? Engine flushes are perhaps the most controversial topic in pre-oil change rituals, but the short answer is no. An engine flush is a process used to remove excess sludge from engines. Fortunately, modern engines don't get as much sludge buildup as older cars. If you've been religiously changing oil at least every 5,000 miles, you don't need a flush. There are 4 instances in which an engine flush might be needed. If you just bought a car with an unknown service history, a flush could be helpful. The second situation is when there is clear evidence of sludge. The third case is when you're switching an old engine from conventional to synthetic oil. Fortunately, this is not a problem for newer engines. And finally, an engine flush is recommended when you've missed too many oil changes. Bear in mind that engine flushes come with major risks. The main concern is that the powerful additives can dislodge large chunks of sludge. These pieces can clog oil passages in critical areas like the hydraulic lifters or the variable valve timing solenoids. This can cause oil starvation and, you guessed it, catastrophic engine failure. So, before you get an engine flush, make sure it's worth the risk. That brings us to the end of this video, but not to the end of the lesson. If you really want to protect your engine for as long as possible, watch this video next. Do this once a month, and your engine will last forever.